I was just crying out to God, trying to figure out what he was going to do with my life, because, I had the picture perfect image created that it was going to look a certain way, and this was not what I had anticipated. And so he brought a producer in, and literally the guy sat down with his family, and, it was Sunday morning, and I'm pouring him coffee, and he literally looked up at me and said, "Have you ever thought about doing commercials?" Aww. And I was like, "What?"
Hey, Against the Tide media viewers.
Welcome to Talking Back with Tera and Barb.
I'm Tera.
And I'm Barb.
I'm so pleased to introduce to you today's guest. She's an actress, director, author, and inspirational speaker. You've seen her on Overcomer and October Baby. Thank you for joining us today, Shari.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thrilled to have you here today.
Yes, definitely. Can you just tell us, first off, how did you get your start in acting?
Yeah, well, I mean, as a little girl, I think like so many of us, you're watching the big screen and you're wanting to do something that looks like that. And I remember early on thinking, gosh, I want to be like that leading lady. But really my start came, I was serving coffee in a coffee shop that my husband and I had started at Calvary Chapel in Phoenix, Arizona. And little coffee shop called Hebrews, and it was for artists. We had started it really hoping that we could bring community together that was going to highlight different artists, creatives in our church and give them an outlet. And so it was really about displaying art pieces or music or whatever that looked like. And so one day, I had struggled all my life with endometriosis, and after my last son was born, my husband and I found out that we couldn't have any more children. And so I was just crying out to God, trying to figure out what he was going to do with my life, because, I had the picture perfect image created that it was going to look a certain way, and this was not what I had anticipated. And so he brought a producer in, and literally the guy sat down with his family, and, it was Sunday morning, and I'm pouring him coffee, and he literally looked up at me and said, "Have you ever thought about doing commercials?" Aww. And I was like, "What?" And he invited me to a casting, and I walked in. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no headshot. I had nothing. I was like completely had, no clue. And, 100 people deep, and I went in, and I think because of the anticipation for me, I just kind of thought, well, I'm never going to get this. So I'm just going to go in and wing it, and we'll see what happens. And so I went in, and I just let it be me. And I think that's really what God wants us to do in the first place. And so I ended up booking that job. And after that, it was just consecutively one thing after the other over the years.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. We are blessed with adoption in our family. And so thank you for sharing that. We talked about actress, director. We heard you directed a scene in Overcomer. I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah. Well, it was really a fantastic opportunity. And directing an Overcomer was really a highlight for me. I think what it did is it really reminded me the Kendrick brothers are the real deal. And so I was on set with Alex Kendrick, and we were only a couple weeks maybe into Overcomer, and we were sitting there a very hot day by a lake, and we just had this scene, and there was technical difficulties that were happening, and so he leaned over and just kind of said, "Hey, what do you really want to do?" And he's, I love this about him because he is constantly asking questions about other people, wants to know about them, and I said, "Well, what do you mean, like?" And he's like, "Well, do you want to be an actress? I heard you direct. I heard you speak. What do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I'd really like to direct." And we talked about that briefly, and then the next thing I knew, he said, "Well, is there a particular scene in the movie that we haven't gotten to yet that, that really has touched you?" And I had no idea at that point that he was going down this road, because that's a big deal to hand something over. But I said, "Well, there's a particular scene between you and me and Priscilla Shire that I think is a really pivotal scene. It kind of tells this moment of who this girl really is and why she's where she's at, and every scene in a movie matters. Every scene matters." And I said, I think there's something in that scene." And he said, "Well, great." He goes, "Why don't you direct it?" And I sat there and I went, "What?" But here's the highlight of the story, actually. We got a break for about a week, came home, had time with our families over 4th of July, and my scene was coming back. When I came back, I was going to be the one that would be directing this particular scene. Well, when I came back, I had found out from wardrobe that that particular day was all of the press. So all the press and executive producers and everything, we're talking probably 50 people on set deep, were there to see Alex and Steven and them do their thing, you know? And here was this
Goosebumps.
day. Yeah, and the other part of it was he let me call my what we call technicals. So I actually got to go in and set up all my technical shots with my DP, and then was ready to, you know, have everybody in place and ready to go the next day. And so then all of a sudden here's this big press day, and I'm just waiting for him to pull the plug. I'm like, he's gonna pull the plug. Anybody would pull the plug. He never said a word. He let me do my thing through that scene, and people were watching, and I walked into a room probably like half this size, and it was full of people, and I had no idea they were in the room next to us, literally watching. And he never said a thing. In fact, all he did was encourage me and walk me through it. And I just thought, how kind and generous can you be to be able to give me something like that? And so, yeah, and then I got, you know, Steven texted me, he's like, we just edited, it's great. So it was awesome.
That's
That
awesome.
is beautiful. In fact, I got a second round of goosebumps as you were telling that.
Now I want to go back and rewatch it a third time to watch that scene.
Thank
That's
you.
great. Can you tell us about anything upcoming that you have in the works?
Yeah, actually, you know, through my ministry that I've done now for several years with women in Hollywood, I've really felt like God's calling me to create content. And I work with a lot of women in Hollywood or outside of the Hollywood frame, and a lot of them are very discouraged because there's not content for them to even audition for anymore. You know, we have to, and we don't have enough faith, you know, projects yet. So I've been working over this last year really diving into creating content, writing scripts, and so we have a new movie that we're working on called Sophie Song, and it's an incredible true story, and so that's really right now what is taking my focus, and it's about a young woman that she's this incredibly talented young girl in high school, and she helps to lead her high school marching band, these underdog kids, to make school history at the Grand National Finals. Oh, wow. And it's an incredible story, and just with her one voice, what she's able to do and accomplish through this, and the characters are deep and rich, and so I'm looking for me to create projects like that so that I can lift up the women that really can exemplify and be part of this voice for Christ, and that's really what I'm focused on.
Wow, can't wait to see that.
Thank you.
Very cool.
Well, we'd love to hear about Consider the Lilies.
Yeah, well, that's my heartbeat. Consider the Lilies is a book that I just released, and it's been really cool to see. You know, after coming off of Overcomer, I kind of went through this really interesting period of time, and I had been writing another book for a couple years, and so I just kept thinking, well, maybe after the movie I'll be able to release this book. And the next thing I knew, I was having a conversation with, and you know, Overcomer is about identity, right? So it's like that's the identity part of it. And I had a group of people come to me, and they were just talking about kind of what I do and with the women and so forth. And all of a sudden, I just started sharing with them about my ministry. I have 11 years of journals and notebooks and women's ministry stuff that I've been doing. And they asked me to put it into a book. And I was like, what? And then they go, oh, and by the way, you have to have it done before the end of the year. I was like, what? So I literally condensed 11 years into a book, and Consider the Lilies really is getting rooted in your destiny by discovering God's plan. And it really is the heartbeat to get women particularly back into their Bibles and really lean into the Lord and his plan for their life, and to seek him in all things. And it takes you through a lot of great just practical tools, reminds you who you are and whose you are. It takes you through identifying your strengths and your weaknesses, how you operate just in general, how God's created you, your talents, giftings, a thing I called mapping. It really gives you the principles to use, and you know, God's been doing this in my life for 11 years, and what I've seen has been pretty fantastic. So I wanted to share it with the world, and that's what it's about.
That's sounds awesome.
Yeah.
That
I'll have to
book
pick that up.
sounds like a blessing, and it's also been a blessing to spend time with you today. Thank you so much for chatting with us for a little bit.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate you guys interviewing me.
Our pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you for checking out this Against the Tide Media video.
And you're probably asking yourself, how can I watch more great interviews?
Well, you're in luck because Against the Tide Media's YouTube channel has tons of great interviews.
You'll find Chatting with the Chosen interviews, 53 Questions with Raina,
Zoom rooms, host interviews, and us talking back with Tera and Barb.
While you're there, like this video, hit subscribe, and click on notifications so you won't miss an interview.
And don't forget to like Against the Tide Media on Facebook and follow us on Instagram.
Thanks again for watching.
When you're ready, you can...
All right. Give me 1 second, just getting you guys all focused up.
One, is it okay to ask, do you have any upcoming projects you'd like to talk to us about?
Sure.
And one, also, would you like to talk about your book?
Sure. I'd love to talk about that.
Okay, excellent. Okay.
Your title again?
Against the Tide Media.
Against Tide Media, Shari Rigby interview. Okay. All right. Against Tide Media, Shari Rigby interview. Take one, Mark.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate you guys interviewing me.
Our pleasure. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Look at you guys.